I am Marwan Cameron, and this is another episode of The Conduit. So glad that you can all make it here tonight. It is Monday, March 29, 2021. It is Monday, my favorite day of the week. Hopefully you've had a productive day. I know that I have. Well, it is 9:34. It is 39 degrees. I should go ahead and make an announcement. And I actually had intended on coming on a little bit earlier. But there's a lot of things going on. But the emergency shelter is open this evening. So just wanted to make sure that that message got out to folks. If you call 211, that will be connected to Gather Together, Grow Together, and we will ensure that people get to where they need to go. Again, the emergency shelter is open tonight, so please get the word out, because it is cold. Last night, I believe it was 36 degrees when I went online, and I think Rob told me that it was even colder out there in Port Orchard. So here we are getting ready to go into the month of April and still dealing with almost freezing temperatures. So that is definitely a concern as I adjust myself here to be a little bit more center camera. So I'm using a new product tonight. So I will, looks like I'm going to be kind of out of frame here a little bit, like my nose is like getting out of frame. Let me go ahead and fix my microphone. So crazy. So I can get a little bit more into frame. I think that's much better. But I met with, shout out to Reverend Michael Ellington. He was watching the podcast and said, you know what? I think I got something for you that will make it a little bit easier for you to do your podcast. So I'm like, yeah, anything you can pass on would be great. Because I tell you, we're just, struggling with trying to get all the little different things going so everything works. And so, I told him we were using Zoom, and, it's like, oh, no, you don't need to use Zoom. Try Google Meet. So I'm like, all right, we'll try Google Meet. So he came in and showed me how to do that, and it was great, so I'm definitely really appreciative to him for that. And so this is our first night trying to do that. We'll go ahead and start our interview as soon as Miss Tasia comes online. Otherwise, we will go ahead and fill you in with some other things that are going on. So I'm working on a series. I told you there are several different shows that I intend to bring to you. And, some of those are going to be, collaborating with other people. We'll continue to do different interviews and things of that nature. But I also come to you and talk about different things, that I think are important, or even, fun things or whatnot. Also things that you bring to me that you may want me to discuss. We will make those topics of discussion and kind of, bring voice to that. Excuse me. So, I typically drink tea when I do my podcast. And so I don't know what happened, but I'm cleaning up the kitchen, and, I had just got this, what is it called? African solstice tea, right? My new favorite tea. So I bought this big canister of it from Amazon. And I'm like, okay, clean up the kitchen. I put this canister of tea somewhere, couldn't find it for 3 days, right? So I'm telling Layla, oh, the tea you got Dad for his birthday, the little sampler one, this is his favorite tea. And, I just ordered it from, Amazon. It just came in. I really want you to taste this tea. So she helped me tear the house up. We're looking for this stuff. I'm like, did I take it to the office? What did I do with this tea? I'm like, did it fall into the trash can? Like, it's like not in this house. Is it in the refrigerator buried? What is the deal? So I was cooking dinner tonight, and had moved the Himalayan sea salt out of the way, and it was behind the sea salt. And I'm like, why would I put it in there? So yeah, I was like, I lost my mind. I'm looking in my car. I'm looking in the office. I mean, I drove to the office looking for my tea. So I don't even know what to say about that. What they say is a senior moment. Maybe I was having a senior moment. So I definitely was having something, but I'm glad that I found it. I couldn't wait to make some and have it for tonight. So I'm like, okay, you can't have this tea until you go online. So I'm trying to be patient. So I will definitely be sipping my tea throughout the evening. But I also wanted to tell you that there's a couple things that I want to talk about that I think are important that I am going to share with you. Uh, because I think it really is critical that we have these conversations, and it's past time to have these conversations, but it's also an opportune time to have these conversations, and we can no longer wait uh, to do that. Let's see, this is telling me my mic is off here on this other monitor here. We can no longer wait to have these conversations. It really is incumbent upon us to do so. As I've been saying many times, we cannot wait for other people to come along and, start to fix the things, the ills of the world that we want to see corrected. It really is truly going to be up to us. And so, with that, we just got to get into it and start doing it. Now, I will say, I'm going to go through when we actually get into it. I'm going to define a bunch of different terminology because I think we need a framework of commonality to speak from. A lot of times when you're having tough conversations, it says my connection was lost. That's weird. When we're having tough conversations, people, their emotions get into it, and that can derail what you're trying to do and what you're trying to put forward. But I would say that it is my opinion that the black male has not had much of a voice and has had to take a back seat and has been caught up into different situations and movements that have relegated us to a space of silence. And so our avocation is typically avocation for everyone in our group and outside of our group, but not for ourselves, right? And so we do have a lot of needs and issues that are concerns to us that people aren't talking about. And so we can't wait for people to talk about them. We can't wait for people to advocate for us on our behalf and put these things forward. They do need to be in our voice. And so, if we're not going to do it, no one's going to do it. And, there is no good time, to do it. I think back when, the election was going on and Ice Cube wanted to meet with, that now President Biden. And Biden told him, "Hey, I'll meet with you after the election," right? And so you elect people based on what it is they're going to do for you. And every other voting block, they go out and they pander, cynically pander to people, and or they go and they have conversations with folks on what it is their needs are and why they should vote for this person or that person. And so that didn't happen for us. And we had an agenda that he was working on that really didn't see the light of day, right? And so now many of us are feeling that, he's in office now. He has the power of executive order. He has all three branches. There's lots of things that he can do. And he is definitely being quite selective on what he is willing to do, right? And so we think about some of the things that are being done for the AAPI community that black people have suffered, and specifically black men have suffered for time in memoriam. And here's an opportunity for him to make those changes. And what we were told was, I can't do anything just for you. It's got to be for all people, or this, that, and the other, or I'm not going to do these things through executive order, or I can't do these things through executive order. But then you see just that happening. And so, he's in office now. So all we can do is make our voice heard and hope that it'll gain traction and gain steam as more of us speak out and make our voices heard as we begin to gather together and have these conversations and really talk about what the issues are so other people know, right? And some of these things I've actually shared before, and in conversations that I've had with several people, they've been shocked that, at one, the fact that some of these things haven't been talked about. Two, they felt like from an emotional standpoint, that those things were counter against them, right? That it was a zero-sum issue, which I don't think that it is. And so then, those things are like, well, why weren't these things brought up? Why weren't these things talked about? And why did anyone say that these were the needs? And again, his very, very tangible example with Ice Cube saying, hey, you know what? These are the needs of black folks and black men. And he was basically shot down for that, and really he was shot down by his own community. And so the BET show that was on, they shot him down. The mainstream media then went ahead and started to shoot him down also. So it was like, come and meet with them after the fact. And at that point, it's too late, right? What is the incentive for anyone to do anything for you after the election is over? And the answer is there is no incentive, right? And so, it's unfortunate. But it is what it is. But we're going to define a lot of terms. We're going to talk about the issues from a standpoint of the impact that it has on black males. Because, again, I think that is important, and it's not a conversation that has been had. There's a lot of advocation for black women and black girls. We have, Fortune 500 companies pledging, what was that, $500 million to, help black women. There is no mention of black men at all. So I'm going to have that conversation, right? So let me show you just a little bit of what we'll talk about, right? And so these are some of the definitions that we'll define. There are a ton of different things that we're going to get into, but we're going to talk about homelessness and how that affects black men in this community. We're going to talk about wages, right? What are our wages? We're going to talk about incarceration, which I think a lot of people, know about, because typically if you're talking about black men, you usually talk about us in the framework of incarceration. And that's usually pretty much it, or police brutality. Everything else is, or what we're not doing, in the black community, or what we're not doing for our folks. So that's one that we're going to touch on, but we're going to look at it from a different lens. Life expectancy. Our life expectancy is actually has decreased. I think I read a study somewhere that said we lost 3 years just coming through the pandemic. That's a lot of time. We're going to talk about black male suicide. We're going to talk about health issues that affect black males. It's an interesting fact that was shared with me that, the NFL every year, has a campaign for breast cancer awareness, right? And they wear the pink to represent. And, it's a men's sport. It's a men's league. And, I think it's great that they do that. At the same time, more men actually die from prostate cancer. And that disproportionately affects black men. But that's not talked about, right? That there's no acknowledgement that that is an issue and that we do need to get checked out. And that my appointment was 2 weeks ago. My follow-up appointment is tomorrow, so I find out what my results are think I shared with you I had a hiatal hernia that I have to get taken care of. I don't know what they're going to do for that, but you know, it is what it is. I finally went to the doctor, and that's one of the things that we don't do, right? For lots of different reasons. We know of the experiences of the Black community that make us untrusting of the healthcare system and doctors. We know. I was just talking with Reverend Ellington the other day, and we were swapping war stories on how we were treated from going to the doctor, and he spoke about like literally just breaking down and just feeling like these people are going to kill me, and I hope that he'll tell that story one day when we're on. But we have stories, we have hundreds of stories like that, right? Every Black man I talk to seems to have more than one story about a horrific experience going to the doctor. So that's one reason why we don't go, right? And there's definitely going to be a correlation between that and us getting the vaccine or believing in the vaccine, or and not being apprehensive. I think we'll always be apprehensive, but we're going to be slow to kind of jump in and get vaccinated or do what we need to do, whatever it is, because we're just going to, our histories, our personal histories, our anecdotal histories have shown us that those aren't really people that have your best interests at heart. And so you're really, putting yourself on the line there by going in. But at some point, you don't have any choice. You got to go in and you got to hope and believe. You got to do a bunch of research and, you become your own doctor, trying to figure it out. So, and it's unfortunate. It truly is. So, you have, our own experiences. We have history, which is another reason. We have time, right? Typically, our jobs don't give us time off. We're working jobs and not careers. So we can't afford to lose work. And many of our minds, right, if we don't have a diagnosis, then we're okay. Rub some dirt on it and keep it pushing. But unfortunately, we end up paying for that later. And far too many times we hear so many stories like, well, if you had just come in a little earlier, we could have, done something about it. But it's late stage now, and there's nothing we can do. So, it's unfortunate. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Black male suicide. We're going to talk about, and one thing about suicide is typically, I want to look at the stats. And like I said, we'll get into it more where I have the data in front of me. But typically, we don't commit suicide as kind of a thing. I mean, we obviously we do. It's not like we have an absence of doing it, but we surely it would be very rare and very unlikely that we would hang ourselves. And in 2020, there were a series of hangings from young Black men and boys that were found hanging in the middle of playgrounds and everywhere else. And the police refused to investigate and would say things like, well, there's no evidence that there was any foul play here or someone did this to him, but you're hanging in the middle of a park. It's like, well, how did you get the rope up there? How did you get yourself up there? And they wouldn't do it. Talking with the parents, the parents are like, this isn't something that my son would do. And as I said before, typically suicide by hanging is not something that Black people do. And so, there's something that needs to happen there as far as investigating those. And I think I watched at least 4 or 5 stories last year in 2020 of that happening to Black men and Black boys. So that, that's definitely an issue. We want to talk about police brutality, of course, and there, I want to touch on the numbers, right? What does that actually look like? When we look at and we say, hey, police brutality is happening. There are murders that are happening. What are the actual numbers? When you listen to the media, right? And it doesn't matter where that media is coming from. A lot of times, I mean, we're typically talking about the mainstream media or newsprint, whatever the case may be, which is also mainstream. But even some of our outlets, right, won't always talk about the actual numbers and the facts. So I think it's important to actually break that down and take a look at that. And then how is that dealt with in the community from a black male standpoint, right? We'll talk about hate crimes. We'll talk about education. You know, I shared an episode, a news posting of the child that was in his senior year and had the 0.17 GPA after 3 or 4 years in high school and had to go back to being a freshman. And you know, he was let down by everyone. And then we're going to talk about the lack of college degrees or college education and student loan debt, right? I think that's also important to look at. We know that Black America as a device to try to gain equality, started going to college in mass and have turned out just billions and billions of dollars of student loan debt. And many of us aren't even working in our fields. And, quite frankly, the degrees aren't worth the paper that they're printed on. And so, what needs to be done? And so for a lot of folks who were looking forward to the Democrats maybe giving some relief in regards to, financial aid debt or student loan debt, and now that's not happening. So, that's tough. And then you look at COVID on top of it, and so many people that have, earned degrees, whether it was an associate's or a bachelor's or a master's, and have student loans, and the impact of their job has gone away. I remember, growing up when I started going to, even before then, right? It was like you got to have a high school diploma. If you don't have that, you need to at least have a GED, right? Then it got to the point where it was like, well, the high school diploma is now the new GED, right? what is it? 40 is the new 30. Then the bachelor degree became the associate degree, and it just would never stop, right? The master's degree is a new bachelor degree, and the PhD is still a PhD, but it's the new master's. And so you always were in this position where you were chasing. It was never enough education that you needed. So you chase more student loan debt in the hopes that you're going to get a livable wage and do all the things that you see other folks do, have retirements and go on vacation and buy boats and have second homes and do all these things. And those things that typically happen for us in mass, right? And so, but we did get student loan debt. We do have that. So I want to have those conversations. I think that it is tremendously important to do so from a black male lens. So we're going to get into that. So what I'm going to do is go another, 5 or 10 minutes, see if she comes on. I know she has a late day, so we may end up rescheduling our interview. But what I am going to do is go over kind of those talking points that I shared with you before, so you know what you're in store for. And I will tell you that I am quite sure that folks will be, some people will be not too happy with me for having the audacity to even find these as concerns, as things to talk about or needs. But like I said, I built for it, and it doesn't matter. Bring it on. We'll talk about cancel culture also. I think that's another one that's really important that we talk about, because that's a device that is used to keep people quiet, especially if you are not in a position of power, right? You can be canceled quite easily. And if and when that happens, you're done and you go away and not to be heard from again. And, life goes on. And with news cycles, right? That person's been canceled, they're out of work, their career has been ruined, and, society as a whole is on to the next person that they're going to cancel or whatever the thing that's newsworthy of the day, and that person is just gone, right? And the devastation to themselves and their family is what it is. They're gone in the ether. And so for a lot of folks, they will not have those conversations because they have no way to inoculate themselves from being canceled, right? And so I can tell you that, before I started this podcast, as I said before, we had a conversation about doing a TV show for the public access, and just seeing the climate of what was going on in the world, and how people would treat you, or dox you, or make up stuff about you, to try to destroy you, if they didn't like what you had to say. It was like, do you really want to do that, right? You've got a 9-year-old who is Googling you at school, and so that's a concern. That's a real thing, right? So you've got to try to protect her as much as you can. And then you also still need to be able to make a living yourself, right? These are not easy times. And so is it a thing where you say, you know what, somebody else has to do that? I would love to, but I can't. And I think what ends up happening is many of us end up saying that, right? Because we're in this position where, hey, we can't lose what it is that we have. And when we talk about, when we go into our definitions, right, we talk about an institution of white supremacy. That's what it is, right? That institution is built to stay intact, right? And that means to be intact, everyone has to play. It's a game everyone has to play. That's the only way that it works. And so if you want to disengage from the game, then they're going to make sure that you're not part of the game. When I say they, I'm saying the institution, not even the people now. It's really kind of like the Matrix, if you will. If you look at it, you had humans that built robots, right? The robots become sentient, right? So if we're using that as an analogy, right? We had racist people create an institution of white supremacy to go forward and make sure that they had all the advancements and everything else, this and that. And then as the robots became sentient, then they no longer needed the humans to build them, take care of them, or whatever. So it's like, hey, we're just going to turn around and we'll just subjugate the humans. And now this is how it is now, right? It's the Matrix, and no one's running it. It's just running itself. And that, to me, is the institution of white supremacy, right? There's no one at the helm pushing buttons, although there are people actively doing things. But as a whole, we're all doing it, right? We're all a battery for the institution of white supremacy. And so we all don't want to be unplugged from the Matrix. And so in order not to be unplugged, we got to go along to get along. Because as soon as we do, we no longer have that job. We no longer have those friends. We no longer have those colleagues. We no longer have access to grants. We no longer have access to scholarships. We no longer have whatever the case may be, right? And so it's like, okay, you need to keep playing this game, because if you don't, you're going to lose everything. And it's going to be tremendously difficult for you to, get back to where you were or excel beyond that. And that's now your life. And you can think of so many folks that are homeless in this country, millions of people who are homeless for a variety of reasons. A divorce, right? Domestic violence, drug addiction, alcoholism, house burnt down, lost a job, bad luck, whatever it is, multiple different things, health issues, right? Hey, couldn't pay my health care bills. I got sick, and my health care needs were so much so that they, no one would pay for them. And then I lost everything trying to do it, right? I got duped by a bad deal. Thinking back by Enron, just all kinds of different ways that people can find themselves there. And you're unplugged from the Matrix, and now you're in this homeless community, and it's like you've been disengaged from society that exists around you, that you can actually see, that you can no longer participate in. And it is tremendously difficult for you to get yourself back into the Matrix and plug yourself back in. And so for a lot of folks, they don't want to lose that, right? Where else are they going to go to do the things that they were doing, while they were plugged in and upholding the institution? And you say, well, go ahead and create your own. But when you do create your own, you're not typically supported. And then you are also systematically torn down, right? From outside and within. And so there's not a lot of incentive for you to unplug. And so you stay. And then you have children. And then you say, well, you know what? I don't want my children to have a hard life. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and allow them or try to put them in a position um, to exist in the matrix in the safest way possible. So come on, let's go ahead and play the game. Let's get you into a school. Let's get you into a college. Let's get you into these things so that you can, you know, acclimate to what is the institution that exists in all of its different ways through the criminal justice system or education or healthcare or employment, or whatever it is, relationships, the economy, on and on and on. Policing, so that you can have a decent life and you don't have to deal with it, right? But we're getting to a point where we don't have a choice. I was watching something earlier a few days ago, and it was some black leaders back in was it the 90s or the 70s? I know it was a while ago. So I'll say the 90s, right? And they were saying that it was already too late for us to really change the ship, to turn the ship around. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not going to give up. I've had these conversations with some other folks about, feeling like it doesn't matter what we do now. We've already hit the tipping point or the point of no return, that we can't get it back. People are too far gone. People are going to fight tooth and nail in order to stay in the matrix. I can't remember the guy who ended up turning on Neo and he wanted to go back in, right? So we may be too far gone in order to, disengage from the matrix and actually thrive and succeed. It may be this for some of us that are pulling away to Zion. It's a kind of a false equivalency where you got the one who is, making a deal. And it's like, hey, we're going to destroy it, leave a few of you left, and then you can do it all again. And that's kind of how it feels, right? You've got, slavery ends, and you've got civil rights, and then you've got Jim Crow, and then you've got, it's just like, all right, so this version of the Matrix is ending. Now we're going into another version, and it's just, kind of slavery with a different name, right? Subjugation, oppression with a different name on it. And you feel like you've made some gains. Some of you will survive to move on. A lot of you will have died, and it is what it is. Because you wonder, what happened? We think about Selma and the 50-year anniversary. We think about Dr. King and all the gains and us marching and boycotting, which is still the most powerful thing that you can do, is boycotting. But they fought and they fought and they fought and they fought. And it doesn't seem like we really have that same fight now, right? I mean, we all came out in mass for George Floyd and then did a lot of marching. But it doesn't seem like we're really doing the fight. But I think about those leaders back then. And my question is what happened to their fight? Did they feel like we got enough? We won. We don't have to fight anymore. Is it the next generation's time to fight? What happened? It just seems like, we were making those gains. I could say probably from a hypothesis, well, when you start murdering, Malcolm and King and others, well, that's going to discourage you from, producing another leader that's going to go forward and have and force change in America. When you bomb Black Wall Street and do all the different things, then yeah, that's definitely going to make people think twice about trying to do anything. But I think also the trick is to put in enough distractions around us that we don't really care. We want to, as long as we're somewhat happy and can kind of do the things, we're going to be okay. I know because I'll speak for myself. I was one of those. If I can go ahead and go to work and pay my rent or pay my mortgage, and my daughter is fed and clothed and healthy, and I can go to the movies, and I can go out to eat and do some other things. I was satisfied. I'm living a decent life, right? The American dream. But all these things are still going on. So here I am. These things need to be addressed. They definitely need to be changed. and somebody has got to bring them to the forefront. And the person that's doing that is Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. And there are 10,000, let me repeat that, 10,000 members of the Brotherhood of the Onyx Report. One more time for the people in the back, 10,000. This isn't fringe. This isn't one or two black men. This is quite a few black men from all across the spectrum, from educated to non-educated and everything in between. And I'm not going to go into these because I'm actually going to present these kind of in lecture form as we go forward. And there's a ton. There's a ton to get into, and I just don't want to gloss over them. I did when we were in Black History Month, and I was referring to that because he was one of the people that I wanted to reflect on as being a contemporary person that was creating Black history. And so this is still in development. It is constantly evolving, and it was last updated October 21 of 2020. For more information, you can watch the Onyx Report weekly on YouTube. Contributors are listed at the bottom. I think it's fascinating to listen to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson and what he brings forth. He is starting a Black male studies program. I think he already has it. I think one of only two in the country or something like that. It's just something really bizarre, right? We're not talking about Black studies. We're talking about Black male studies, right? And, just to kind of look at these things, this is what the 10,000 members of the Brotherhood believe need to be addressed. And so, like I said, we'll go into more detail on this, but just as a cursory look, number one is family court reform, okay? So the family court's treatment of black men has unfairly and drastically diminished black men and boys' quality of life by privileging women as primary caregivers. Okay, so we're going to get into child custody, mandatory paternity testing at birth, reinstating at-fault divorce standards, financial abortion, which with some of the women that I've had conversations with definitely was a trigger. But I think that's a really important conversation to have. A child support value system, a right to lifestyle, require former child support management reports, prohibit jailing for failure to pay child support, which has always been one that was very perplexing. So the person isn't paying child support for whatever reason, and so you're going to put them in jail, and they'll suspend your license. They can take your passport, right? And then when they get out of jail, they've probably lost the job if they had it. They may have lost their apartment because they were in jail because they couldn't pay. You see what I'm saying? So exactly how do I get to a space where I can actually start paying the child support? So it's just kind of this vicious cycle, right? Or someone who maybe fell on some times and couldn't pay the whole amount or was trying to catch up or whatever the case may be, now is just hanging on by a thread, and now is put in jail and is now the homeless person that I was talking about before. Income floor for child support and alimony assistance program, tax filing options. Okay, so those are the things we're going to get into regarding that. Education, which is really an important one to me. Educational institutions play a huge role in influencing black boys and men from preschool through graduate school. So we talk about the prison or the school to prison pipeline. And a lot of times we talk about it in the abstract, but we know that this is a real thing and that it happens. And they can look at stats. When they're looking at if a fourth grader is being disciplined, and is consistent, then they can track with high percentages that young boy is going to end up having a life of being incarcerated and having to deal with the law. So, from preschool through graduate school, yet the discrimination and underdevelopment they experience at the hands of teachers, practices, the administrative bureaucracy, and educational policies that do a great disservice to the supposed mission to educate black males. Okay, huge thing to talk about. Number 3 is affirmative action. Number 4 is targeted homeless programs. This one I'll read, but I'll also definitely go into some stats there. Especially post incarceration, black men should have prioritized or should be prioritized for housing as they are most often turned away despite having housing vouchers. Consequently, as black America constituted half of America's homeless pre COVID, it's worth reading again. Consequently, as black America cons- uh, constituted half of America's homeless pre COVID and remain disproportionately homeless, the majority of the homeless across race tend to be male. This makes black males the most susceptible group to homelessness. Couple that with, there's a lot of programs, good ones like drug court, right? Clean and sober housing that exist. But if you don't have those issues and you're not a custodial parent, where do you go? There's not a lot of men's shelters that are out there. Targeted unemployment programs. As black males experience unemployment rates at over 40 to 50% in over 34 major cities prior to COVID. Again, when we're listening to the news and we're watching how, what was it, 700, I believe it just dipped under 700,000, 680,000 people applied for unemployment on last week, right? Well, again, black males experience unemployment rates at over 40 to 50% in 34 major cities. So we're talking about, we're going to get back to normal when unemployment goes back to single digits for the country at large, right? But we're at 40 to 50% pre-COVID. Now that we're in COVID, it's even worse. Post-COVID, where are they going to go to work? Where are they going to go to work? The restaurant owners, the businesses that have closed down, those folks looking for jobs, people needing to change, careers being lost to automation or finding different economies of scale due to having to be in lockdown, right? We can do things, remotely. We found out we didn't need as much staff as we needed, so we don't have to bring them back on. We have all these things converging, right? So you got all those folks looking for jobs. You still have the homeless population. You have the people that are going to be impacted, that are going to need help, and what's going to happen with these folks. And then you're going to also have the men coming out of prison that are coming out to what program, right? At some point, they got to stop printing money, right? They're doing what they can, and I'm putting that in quotes very loosely, what they can. Still haven't seen my $1,400, but I haven't gotten any stimulus this whole time. But doing what they can, that's going to stop at some point in time, right? You know that at the 2-year mark where we have the midterm elections, it's likely that it's going to swing back the other way. And when it does, the Republicans are typically more fiscal. So that means that the spigot is definitely going to dry up if it's not already dry by the time 2 years gets here, right? And so oftentimes, which is, an oddity to me, I just can't understand it. I can get people, being against abortion, right? But the part that I don't understand is, okay, so you're against abortion, the baby is born, but then you don't give a damn about the baby or what happens to the baby, who then becomes a boy and a toddler and a young man and then a man, right? If he's lucky enough to ascend through all of those stages of life. I just couldn't understand that. Like, we're going to force you to have the baby, which I could get if that's your belief piece. But then once the baby is born, we don't really care about what happens to the kid. That part, I don't get that one. That one puzzles me. Law enforcement has been a major barrier, at times a source of injustice for black men. So we'll talk about that one. And there's a lot there to unpack. We'll talk about intimate partner violence and homicide policy reform. So we'll talk about a lot of misnomers that exist in this space, right? Despite stereotypes that intimate partner violence, homicide, aggression is the sole purview of black males, it is nigh equal, which means bi-directional, in the black community, meaning that men assault women to the same degree that, or women assault men at the same degree that men assault women. Okay. So it's not this thing where it's like, 80% of these crimes of intimate partner violence are perpetrated by men on women. No, it's actually even. And the numbers of interracial intimate partner violence homicide amongst the 40 million black population is negligible, with the data suggesting that women across race initiate violence first while opting to use weapons more often than men. And so, as we have this conversation, and again, we're going to have conversations that are intellectually honest, right? We're not looking at that. So we're looking at your anecdotal story and, the experience that you had or the experience that someone else that had. But these are the statistics, right? And then men are told to, walk away. A real man would ... You're not a man if you don't ... we know that it is pretty much a standard practice that if there is a domestic disturbance, and the police show up, someone's got to go to jail, and oftentimes it's the male, no matter what the situation is. So those that has to be talked about. Sexual assault and rape acknowledgement. Okay, you got to think about, and I don't think that's listed on here, but we know that disproportionately black males are sent to prison more, and their sentences are longer. We know that there's a lot of sexual assault and rape that happens in prisons, and that's not talked about either, right? So when we think about rape, we only think about the rape that happens to a woman. We don't think about the story after story where we see these teachers raping children, high school and junior high kids, right? They call it they were in a sexual relationship, but they're not calling it what it is. So those are issues that need to be discussed. But we know that rape is happening, not even on a daily basis, on an hourly, minute basis in prison, and people are coming out of prison, victims of sexual assault, right, of repeated rape, and that damage, and they're supposed to be there to be, to do their time, right, to hopefully learn some things, to reflect, maybe gain some skills and come out and become a productive member of society, not to come out more damaged than what they went in. That wasn't why we lock people away, right, when they do something bad. So, again, another thing that needs to be talked about, and that's a hard one. And I know people that have come out and have had these issues, had these experiences, and call me on it if I'm sugarcoating it, and I need to be a little bit more full throated about it, and I'll do that, right? Because I've been so used to being in spaces, quite frankly, a lot of liberal spaces where you can't really kind of speak your mind and say what you believe needs to be said, because you'll be shut down. And so I'll say things like, their experiences or whatnot. No, they were raped, right? Things that we want to, lock men away for and throw away the key, deservedly so, for what happens out here in the world. But why is that not happening, and why aren't our men protected in there? And then when you think about just how sick it is and how these things happen, it's like, what, every 2 weeks, it seems like, another black male is being are released from prison because of evidence or new technology, or someone came forward and said it wasn't that person, and they're getting out after doing 30 and 40 years. What are they supposed to do with their lives at that point in time? And black men do get longer sentences. Got to talk about it. Got to talk about it. And that is really a vicious cycle. So think about it now. You've decriminalized marijuana. You have drug court and all these other great programs that disproportionately help the white community and other demographics. But our black males and the black folks aren't being helped at the same rate, right? We're getting more time. We're not exactly being released from jail. And so the thing that was illegal and was giving black men and black women years in prison, in jail, for possession or selling marijuana, now it's legal, right? They get out, they can actually buy it. But I don't know how many weed shops you've been in, but how many weed shops are owned by black people? So not only is it everyone's using drugs pretty much at the same rate, right? And they don't exactly go over to the frat party or the sorority house where drugs are being used, at the same rate as they're being used on the street corner or the places where they want to catch folks. They could go there and arrest them and destroy their lives, just like they destroy black American lives. But they don't. Now you're in jail, you get a longer sentence, you get out of jail, it's legalized, and you can't even legally sell the weed that you got in prison for before, but you're watching all the other demographics that are able to do it. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. And then many of the Republicans, and I should do a story on that. I think maybe Vice did, or another news outlet did a story on how many of the Republicans, John Boehner being one of the big ones, are part of these, mega marijuana companies that control the industry and are making money hand over fist, but was one of the biggest opposers of making marijuana legal, right? And no one knows that. And for most people, they're just happy to be able to, have access to marijuana now without repercussion, or without some repercussion. That's good enough for me, but not really looking at the issues. So it's just one of the things that's frustrating to me that I see. Number 8, health-targeted cancer campaigns, treatment and recognition. I think I talked about that before. Black men are diagnosed with cancer at a slightly higher rate than white women and white men and white women, but they die from it more than white men, white women, and black women, especially in Arkansas, Alabama, Connecticut, D.C., Georgia, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, Tennessee, and most especially in Wisconsin. The scales for measuring black male cancer is 3 times larger per 100,000. So where are the programs? Where is the NFL, right? The majority of the NFL are black men. The majority of the NBA is black men. Where are the campaigns for black men and cancer? So even if it's something that we predominantly participate in, we still can't even talk about the ills that affect us. Targeted small business support. I talked about this earlier, when I first came on, right? There are all these programs for black women, grants, business, entrepreneurship, STEM. Let's help you do this. Let's help you do that. And that's all great. But where is it? Google grants or business help for black men. And it will steer you, if you find something, it's going to steer you back to black women. Social Security and life insurance, family support, parental leave, reverse voter disenfranchisement. So, again, you already see all the voter suppression stuff that's happening. And it's unfortunate because You've got folks that are in office. We did this big, um, uh, election to get the folks over there in Georgia. And then Georgia's one of the worst places as far as passing laws for voter suppression. And then there was like 200 something bills that have been pushed through before the first quarter is even over to suppress the vote. Right? You can't even give people snacks and water if they're waiting in line. You shorten the times. You've decreased the voting destinations, and then you can't even treat people humane. But I'm sure you can feed little Toto, little dog, or little cat that you got, and then that's okay, right? But don't feed the humans. Don't give them a snack while they're in the sweltering heat. But then we're overcharged as black males. We have longer sentences, and then we're hit with felonies, right? And then you get out, and then you can't vote. And so you're going to keep paying taxes, but you're not going to vote. So you don't count. 3/5 of a human in action. 13, black male specific reparations for the transatlantic slave trade through the 21st century and hyper incarceration. This one I'll spend a lot of time on too, because I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of facts that people don't know about how barbaric slavery was, because again, they talk about it in our textbooks now as, it was trade, or, the Civil War wasn't about slavery. I think you had some Republicans saying that, we were better off in slavery. I think even Kanye West said something like that too. The mutilation of genitals, the things that happened during that era were so egregious, crimes against humanity, that the United States has never had to atone for or pay for, right? So I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper, because I think that we don't talk about that enough. And we don't talk about it in a space where it's tangible, right? It's just kind of this, it was slavery, it was so long ago, and people, they pick cotton, and yeah, they got whipped, and the whipping wasn't really, that's bad, but it was a long time ago, and why do we need to apologize? I didn't have any slaves. I didn't benefit off of slavery. I was a marginalized community also, so why should I have to pay? Hey, I'm a black person, and I don't even feel like I should get reparations. I don't need them. I don't want them. Just allow me to do this, and that's enough, right? So you have all kinds of different thoughts out there, but America has not atoned for that, for those crimes against humanity. They have not, and they also do not talk about how slavery has impacted. It's like compounding interest, right? Many of you know about if you double a penny every day, after 30 days, you'll be a millionaire. Slavery is the same way, right? It has an exponential impact on Black Americans' lives, right? And we're talking primarily about foundational Black Americans, and I'll define that when I go into my definitions. But it's the reason why we continue to suffer. It's the reason why the institution of white supremacy and slavery and all those things continue to plague the country, and by and large, most of the world. Most of the world. I'm also hoping, the organization Up From Slavery will jump in on this one, because I'm sure they probably have a lot of good information to share, and hopefully pictures too. Hopefully pictures too, because people are so blasé about it. But it's like, if anyone were to, discount or dismiss the Holocaust, they are pretty much instantly canceled. But for us, we just need to get over it. We just need to get over it. And then the United Nations, we charge the U.S. with genocide of the black male. And so that's the last one there. Major contributors are BGS Ibmore, Adam Ibmore. BGS has a YouTube channel you might check out also. David Williams, Stuart Knight, Tristan J. Brian M., and Chief of the South. Again, this is Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. There are over 10,000 members that are part of this brotherhood of the Onyx Report. This information is there for you. You can just go ahead and Google him at .com, and that information will come up if you want to read more. There are a few links in here. But again, it is time to have these conversations and to not to no longer worry about it. At this point, cancel culture is a thing. I could be canceled before I wake up tomorrow. We all could, and I'm sure they'll try at some point in time. The deeper I go into this, the more there are going to be folks that will say, you know what, this cannot stand. We have to stop it. And hey, you know what? It is what it is. I'm at a point in my life now where, that saying, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. That's kind of what's been happening to us, right? We fall for the NFL or the NBA or for the club or for, music or for, the things that are done or not done in the name of equality. And, you watch things as they progressively get worse or they, pee on you and they tell you that it's raining. So it is what it is. But again, I wanted to be clear on that when we have these discussions. This is an institution now that is pretty much on autopilot. It does have people that are helping to contribute to keep it in place, but all of us actually help to keep it in place, right? And so many of us feel like we have stuff to lose by dismantling this in a way that it truly needs to be dismantled. There can't be any consequences for anyone that is keeping these institutions going, but everything else can be punished. Everything else in this country can be punished, but this cannot be punished, right? We see that as our corrupt officers are on trial. We see that with judges on hot mics. We just see it. We see it with a white woman in a deli with her black children, calling, a worker the N-word and just being nasty and disgusting and teaching her kids that, So I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about self-hate and where do those things come from? Well, if you've got, a white mother, calling someone that looks like you the N-word, and with the hate and the vitriol, it's like, what would be the takeaway for the child from that? That's tough. That's tough, man. That's tough. Well, like I said, I don't want to be on too long. We were going to have our interview with Tasia Green, and she may still be at work. I actually did really good tonight. I kept it to an hour and 4 minutes. So I'm going to just stay at my hour and 4 minutes right now. I think that is good. And they'll get shorter. I'm going to redo some of the interviews once I get through. I want to give people an opportunity to answer all the questions. The people that come on really enjoy it. Again, check out that CARE interview on YouTube. The full interview is there. It is 3 hours, but it's just a great conversation. And it's not all about the questions. We talk about astrology, talk about different interests and things like that. We really had a good time. So it was a fun conversation. But check that out and support CARE if you can. Definitely, there's a GoFundMe to help someone over there save a farm. So they need some help with some legal fees, and so we've donated $50 to that. So please go and support. Check out those videos. Our whole library is over there on YouTube. Once you go over to the homepage, you won't see anything. Just click on videos, and then you'll see the whole library there. Lots of good stuff. The Layla Daddy podcast are there also. And I said we will be continuously coming to you. I will tell you, I will be back tomorrow, but I will be back tomorrow evening at 6:30. Our 2x2 studies will not happen tomorrow. We needed to reschedule that. as Reverend Ellington had a conflict. So we will be back with that next Tuesday, but I will be live tomorrow night with information because I will be attending a Zoom meeting with the health department of Kitsap County. So I want to bring that information to you tomorrow evening. And then Wednesday, our guest will be from the health department of Kitsap County. So that'll be great. And I will get a little bit further more into the black male political agenda. So please, if you can, stay warm tonight. Again, if you see anyone, if you're out and about, give us a call. The cold winter shelter is open tonight. I will try to send out a message as soon as I hear if it's going to be open tomorrow night. I don't know yet. But it is currently 36 degrees and it is only 10:39. So I'm pretty sure it's probably going to hit freezing tonight. Not that it needs to be freezing for someone to have a roof over their head. All right. Well, I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. Have a great Bow Tie Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
All right, we should be clear.